got this, and I got you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Care Conversations with Griswold Home Care. I'm Erin Pickrell, Director, and each month we sit down with a trusted professional in the care and wellness community to share real insights, practical guidance, and local resources that help families navigate aging in place with confidence. Griswold Home Care has been supporting families in our community for more than 5 years. Whether it's short-term recovery care, support for veterans, or 24/7 in-home assistance, our mission is always the same: to make aging in place safe, meaningful, and supportive. Today, I'm excited to welcome Paula from Gibson Mediation Group. She's an experienced mediator who works closely with families facing complex and often emotional decisions, especially around elder care, family communication, and planning during times of transition. Mediation can be incredibly valuable when families are navigating tough conversations, differing perspectives, or challenging decisions. And today, we're looking forward to learning how mediation can help families find clarity, alignment, and peace of mind. Paula, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Of course.
We're really glad to have you. And what inspired you to start Gibson Mediation Group after practicing law? And what drew you specifically to working with families during life transitions?
Well, thanks for that question, because as an attorney practicing civil litigation, I really hated the fact that so much time and resources were spent trying to litigate problems when I knew there could be a better way. There could be solutions that were derived by the parties, but it was just extended out for too long, and I felt like too many people were wasting their time and money in litigation. And so, having taken on a lot of pro bono cases when I worked in a law firm, I really liked working with clients directly and having that one-on-one. And so I did some family law mediations in DC Superior Court, and that was a really great opportunity to assist people going through tough times. And so I kind of realized I was drawn to people who had difficult family situations and individual situations that impacted those around them, and I felt like if I could help these people in need at this critical stage in their life, at this major transition that's happening, I felt like I could do something good, and that made me feel really great about practicing law in a different way by doing mediation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is mediation? And I think you can start with that one.
Yeah.
I like that. What is mediation?
Okay. Well, some people always think it's meditation, as maybe I've told you before, but it's a way to resolve differences without going to court. So you're working with a neutral facilitator to have conversations that get everything out there so that people are fully transparent about what their concerns are, and sort of extracting from them information about what's important to them, what's not important, and finding ways to reach solutions and common ground and avoid going to court.
Mm-hmm. And at what point should families consider mediation instead of continuing to work it out on their own? What are some of the warning signs?
That is a really good question, because I think sometimes, and you might see this in your work, that people just are stuck and they're like not making any progress. You know that decisions need to be made, and they just don't go anywhere. And some of the biggest red flags, at least what I see, is when there's like a total breakdown of communication, so that one sibling is entirely cut out from participating in mom's decisions or the family's decisions for mom, because they feel either left out, they feel anger, there's something going on. And so when it gets to that point, that's when it's really helpful to have a neutral person get involved with family conversations, because for whatever reason, people seem to kind of trust the conversation when they know somebody who's really truly has no skin in the game. Because whatever happens to someone's parents, of course I care, but it's not my family, so it's like a different element that a neutral person brings to a family dynamic that sort of diffuses a lot of the situations that are going on, and you can break apart and speak with people individually to try to get at why they're maybe stuck and what they think a solution could be, and then bring it into the mediation room and just talk about what you heard from each sibling. And then a lot of times people don't even realize that a certain sibling was thinking a certain way about the other sibling, and they had no idea that a childhood hurt or something was factoring into why they couldn't talk about mom's situation. So it's really kind of interesting, and but the red flags are definitely when there's been a communication breakdown and someone's left out of the process.
Yeah, so sometimes our caregivers can, spot those signs or act as very slight mediators when they're seeing different family members, visit the person.
Yeah.
So it might be something for us to look out for.
Yeah, definitely. And then a lot of professionals who might be in your world or similar worlds, when all of a sudden they realize they're spending like 2 hours a day with this particular family, and that's when like you need a facilitator, because you can't always do that if it's just a communication issue. It's one thing if you're putting out a fire that deals with healthcare or a medical need or an emergency, but it's another thing if you're just in this pool of bickering with people, then you realize we need some help here. So.
Yeah. And how do you help families navigate situations where parents want to stay independent, but adult children or other loved ones have serious safety concerns, as well as cognitive decline or memory concerns?
Right. That can be really tricky, because as you can imagine, you have the adult who wants to always remain independent, and they may not realize how they've been declining, and so their child wants to really help them. And so it's out of love that they're trying to do these things for the parents, but it's out of fear that the parent doesn't want these things done. They're going to lose their independence if they admit that they need help. So what I try to do is kind of have those conversations with people individually and try to find out what it is that they're fearful of if you brought in somebody. And oftentimes it's a way of finding out, like, maybe they just aren't ready to let go of some control. And if they have a choice in maybe who is hired to come into the home, then that gives them a sense of control and power that they made that decision. So even though the sibling is the person who brought up the idea of bringing in some home care and help, it's actually the adult who then gets to make that decision. Maybe you have 2 really good caregivers that you think would be a good fit for the family, and then let that parent decide. And that can be empowering to that person. And you can always say, you might do this yourself. It's on a trial basis. We'll just see how it goes, so they don't feel locked in. But when there's a capacity issue, that gets challenging too, because having the law background, I'm always looking at things from the perspective of who has the authority to do what. So I want to know, does somebody have someone appointed to be their healthcare agent? So in the event that the parent loses capacity, is there somebody who can make those decisions for that adult? Do they have other legal paperwork done? Because if they don't have a durable power of attorney, for example, they won't have somebody who can stand in their shoes to deal with financial issues in the event that that person loses capacity. And so sometimes, prematurely, people, the siblings, might want to take on those roles that they don't technically have the legal right to do. And so it's always a good idea to have all those conversations in advance of any capacity issues, because once someone is deemed as not being having the capacity to make these kinds of decisions, they have their doctors weigh in on it, then it becomes a difficult situation, and you have to consider guardianship, and because you didn't have the paperwork done to have someone stand in the shoes of that adult. So.
Exactly. I imagine part of mediation is making sure that the families are prepared for any eventuality that may happen, and
exactly,
we've talked about planning and making sure that even as a adult, any kind of adult, 18 to 100, that they're prepared for any situations that may happen.
Yes.
And what advice would you give for families who have decided that they're going to meet with a mediator? How should they prepare?
I think they should just understand that a neutral person is going to be asking a lot of questions, and the more comfortable that you can be with that person, the better, because she's going to want to speak with each of you individually to get information, to understand what's important to each participant in the mediation, so that mediator can bring all that into the room, the mediation room, so that everyone's issues and voices get heard. Because sometimes the quieter person may not want to raise certain issues that are really important to them, but maybe they don't have the confidence to speak in front of others in their family who maybe are more aggressive or kind of overpower the other person. So I try to be that person to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So letting families know that they'll have to talk with somebody one-on-one and spend a little time doing that, and then that they have to be ready to participate in the mediation and be prepared to be open to suggestions and to not take things personally, and to know that the reason they're there is to really support their loved ones. And so if you can try to direct the focus on the piece of the adult that you're trying to make decisions with and for, then I think that's helpful for families to be prepared to think with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what's one message that you would want families to hear about, navigating elder care decisions together? What would that piece of advice be, message?
I think it would be to have a plan before it's too late. Because if you can have these sensitive and difficult conversations with your older adult parent before things go sideways, it's really good, because people then understand, like, oh, okay, I know what's important to mom, or I know what she wants to have done if there's a medical emergency. I know who to call. I know how I would begin to handle it. And oftentimes when those decisions are made together in a group, then people understand what their role is, and they feel like they're a part of it, and there's buy-in for the care of the parent. And when people feel bought in, they're going to follow through, because they're the ones who brought the information to the table, and they have the role in making the decisions, and they feel good and empowered to follow any agreements that come out of the mediation. And so from that mediation and agreements and messaging that I want everyone to know is have a plan before it's too late. That's key.
Yeah, and I think, it's difficult, they're difficult conversations, but you're either going to have them in an emergency, or you're going to have them, hopefully in a calm space to be prepared.
Right.
And so I'm grateful. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
Sure.
And to learn more about Gibson Mediation Group and the services you provide, you can visit gibsonmediationgroup.com to explore resources and get in touch directly. And thank you all for joining us for Care Conversations with Griswold Home Care for Chevy Chase. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for more conversations with trusted local professionals who are making a difference every day. We'll see you next month.